There is a story today to be revealed, and I didn't want to let it go without telling my part of the story. Today is Disclosure Day. After a month of the disclosure year. What is the disclosure? First of all, to understand, the government of the United States and some other governments started to disclosure our relationship with the knowledge about the aliens being on Earth. And of course, this is something that we all knew. This is something that we've been talking about for so long, not even a few years, but since the very beginning. So for most of us, this is not news. And what have been disclosure lately in the past 2 months haven't actually affected everyone or anyone, because they don't really have much data, or the actual data that can be revealed is not much deep. But it's not random that the same month that the disclosure started to happen, Steven Spielberg released this movie that is called Disclosure Day. So made me think, and for sure it made think most of you too, about how there is a plan behind the explanation of Disclosure Day, because a movie like that is not done in just 1 month. It takes a long time, many years to plan, and it's not random that is being released exactly the same the first day of the World Cup in the United States. It's not random that is released the same month that the actual disclosure is happening. It's not random that so many people this year started to talk about what they know about the aliens being here on Earth. And this is, again, as I said, not something new. But of course, there has been a lot of thinking about it, a lot of thoughts about it in a very conspiranoic way. And I understand that conspiracies are very intriguing for humans, and that there are many secrets in humanity, and that is very attractive for most of us. But also, something that we have to understand is that it's not that someone is hiding information, is that we are not ready, prepared to observe the information. It's like, how many times in your life happened that so many important things have gone through your life and you haven't noticed it until you were ready to see it, to appreciate it, to understand it. So it's not that this is new, it's not that this is just happening now. It's just that our consciousness is not ready to perceive them. So in the universe, most of the things that we don't know, they just cross our sights and we don't even pay attention to it. But they are there. So it's not that someone is hiding something, it's that we are hiding from them. And one of the reasons why we hide from them is because we are scared of them. It's because we don't understand them, we don't know how to handle them, so our mind tries to block most of things. So that's why we think, oh, this is a secret, there's something hidden here, someone is hiding something from us. But actually, it's our own eyes, our own ears, our own senses that is hiding things from us. It's our own perception of reality that is uncovering most of the realities, because we are not ready to understand. This takes me to the very first story of all humanity, when the snake tells Eve about the apple when the apple of wisdom is given to her, she discovers something about a big truth that she was not ready to understand. And that's why the whole reality starts to break apart. She was not ready to handle the answers, because wisdom takes responsibility. Wisdom takes time to assimilate. You have to go through an initiatic path, an initiatic journey to understand what is the truth. If you are given the truth directly, then there is no process. So it's not truth. It's just another slice of a lie. And that is why sometimes it's very difficult to actually explain things, because not even myself know all the truth. Because one thing is to remember things, the other thing is to know the truth. And the truth can be only told when everyone experiences the truth, when everyone feels the truth. And when we are confused by everything that is around, then we cannot really understand what the truth is. And one of the things that the magicians do in this reality is to use things that are confusing so the mind believes they are real. And I call those magicians of the mind spies. And those spies are actually using the tricks of the mind to manipulate our minds and to control what we see, what we perceive. So we call it reality when in fact they are not. And this is not a conspiracy. This is how we live life. This is how mom and dad have taught us how life is. Through their own eyes, we have been taught on how to perceive the reality. So we have the two eyes of mom, the two eyes of dad, and then the eye of society. So it's like 5 eyes that are controlling the way we observe, the way we perceive things. That's why I was explaining how important it is for us to nourish the third eye, the pineal gland, in the right way. And the right way is never about information. The right way is always about light, pure, real light. It's not about a faith, it's not about a belief, it's not about what I'm saying. It's about your pursuit of the true light, of the true rainbow. That's the only way in which you can actually access real truth within yourself. It's the path that takes you there. So in the meantime, a lot of people will give slices of truth and will create refractions of that truth. So to navigate the consciousness, to navigate the actual truth, we have to use the same symbols and try to reorganize them in a different way. If we do so, we can calibrate the truth. We can navigate our own reality. And there's so much to tell about these stories. There's so much to change. But today I wanted to speak about only one. Because today, if you're gonna watch the movie, and the next days, if you're gonna watch the movie, you will see that one of the main codes is that there's a deer with one eye, as the other eye is from the Greys, a race of aliens that has no heart, that they develop only technology, and they manipulate reality through technology. So whatever we see, whatever we use in technology is being controlled by them. And one of the reasons why they use certain animals is because those animals represent wisdom, observation, and what they are trying to do is to make us feel that they are the enemy, that they are scary. So we cannot trust the deer, we cannot trust the owl, we cannot trust certain animals that are actually symbolisms for us to perceive reality, to find wisdom, to find focus. And what the narrative does is to use those codes to make us feel afraid of it. The same thing happened for the past 3,000 years with a very important symbol for humans, which was the goat. Do you remember? They took the goat, which was the main nourishment for human. It was the reason why we got together around the fire. The goat was the reason why we celebrated life. We follow the mountains. We follow God because of the goat. We were shepherds as the first work of human beings. We used the goats and the sheep for everything, to eat, to produce our tools, to understand our reality. And it was so important that the cycle of our calendar started with a goat called Aries. We put Aries in the sky, the goat, to know that that's the beginning. And people would gather to tell stories, to sing songs. So the goat became also the muses. So there's a goat, which is Pan, the god Pan, that is dancing in the fire as everyone shares knowledge and wisdom and art. That's how the muses dance around the goat. That's how the witches dance around the goat. So when someone understood that that code was so powerful for the beginning, they started to manipulate the code and turn it into the image of Satan, the devil. And now when we see the goat, instead of seeing the portal for all creation, what we see is the devil. And it's so encoded in our minds that we cannot escape from it unless we walk backwards and do the reverse engineering of the story itself. That is the only way we can actually go back to the origin and understand what is the truth of that symbol. We turn death into the symbol of salvation also. Vaticanus comes from the goddess Vatica, which is the goddess of death, the Etruscan goddess of death. We turn the cross in a symbol of death when actually it was just a wood, a holy wood that would kill someone, from where you hang someone to punish. So that was the symbol that we turned into light, when actually it was the tree, when actually it was the olive tree, not the holy wood. Symbols have been turned upside down all the time in order to tell us something and to hide a code and to make us feel afraid of a specific code. So today, when you watch the Disclosure Day, the eyes that are controlling from behind, you will see that the main symbol of they controlling us is a deer. That the main image that is implanted in our brain is a one-eyed deer. And I'm sorry to tell, but do remember that I was born in a city called Venado, Tuerto, which is called, Venado Tuerto means one-eyed deer. And that is why I have this in my temple. I have my city, which is my symbol, which is what I became known for. And also Merlin told me that I should not become like Merlin, I should become my own being, which is the one-eyed deer. So that's why in my life, if you follow everything that I've done, you will see that I have connected to two entities that have only one eye. One, the Norse god Odin, he gave up an eye to Mimir's well so he could receive the inner wisdom that then was given as the letters so people could speak and transmit information. Odin, the father of all gods. And in the other one, Egypt, with Horus, the god with one eye. This god gave up an eye in the war between darkness and light, and he became the one eye of all, the sun, in the shape of a hawk. and he flew every day, controlling with the light, bringing the light to this reality. So these two represents the two eyes that are giving the information to the divine. So the gods with one eye are giving wisdom. And when I was born in that city, I knew my pattern would be Egypt and Scandinavia. I knew that the one eye would be a code. And also, my code is to find the other eye. Where is the other eye? Where is that missing link? And do you notice that what I put here in the heart of the deer is Sri Lanka? Because Sri Lanka is the place where that eye was missing. There's a deer that takes Sita from Rama in the story of the Ramayana, and that deer takes Sita towards Sri Lanka, the lowest point of gravity on Earth. Sita represents the electron, and when an electron is lost in an atom, the atom of Rama, so the bridge is broken, and what happens in that bridge broken is that we miss a particle, creating for the first time an ion. An ion in Greek means movement, is the energy that moves to create something. So you have an ion, which is when you miss a particle, an electron, or an ion when you gain an electron. So an eye on you, or an eye on someone else. So you give up an eye, or you receive an eye, an ion, to balance the observation and the creation of everything. You can only create something, a link for an atom to become a molecule, a chemical element, and so on, if you give up an eye to Mimir's well, or if you receive an eye of the observation. So this is quantum mechanics on the observer changes reality. So it's not just about our eyes, it's about ions, the particles that creates everything. So the symbol of having one eye, it means that you gave up an electron to receive something from others, to create a link. So for me, the deep heart of Sri Lanka is where that ion is where that ion can create the links and the bridges of everything. So when I look into this story, I remember I am the one with one eye searching for an ion, searching to put the ion back where it's supposed to be. But that ion was lost because someone took it, someone broke it. That is the story that made up everything that I am doing. All the projects that I have in my life are just because there's an eye that is not observing the right position, because an ion was taken away from the right position. So then we can talk about myth, about society, about enlightenment, whatever. But that's the main core of everything that I do. And who can take away an ion? Who can break an ion? Who can actually destroy the structure that holds an ion? So that's how I started my alchemical journey. The alchemical journey is to find which chemical element is the one that lost the power, that lost the inner self and gave up an eye. And in this story, the alchemy taught me very well, which is a chemical element that represents the deer, which is called molybdenum. Molybdenum is a chemical element that is comparable to lead. Why it's lead? Because molybdenum is the Greek word for lead. And in alchemy, the whole process is how to turn lead into gold, how to go from this gray color and heavy element and turn it into something shiny like the sun. So that is the process of alchemization, of turning the matter that is heavy into something bright, that like this light of the sun, from lead into gold. That is the main thing. In the inner world, in the outer world, is to create a link, an eye, for lead to shine as gold. But what happened? This chemical element, molybdenum, was the one used by a Hadron Collider for the first time ever in history to modify its structure and create an element that has never existed before in the universe. Only humans created that element, and it was the beginning of all the conflicts that we have today. And I will explain why. Molybdenum was modified, and by being broken, it created a different structure, a different ionization that never existed before. So from lead, instead of going to gold, it went from molybdenum towards technetium. Technetium is called technetium because techne means fabricated, something done with art, something created by a craftsman. So technetium is the symbolism of technology. It's the same word, the same etymology, it's just the element of technology. And it's also another very gray, dark element. It's not shining, it just created technology. So in that moment, when you break a proton, you're not just breaking one proton from all that it is. When you go at the speed of light, what you do is to create actually a mistake in every proton. So you are disarming the origin. Remember that in the quantum field in the universe, every proton is only one. So if you go at the speed of light, you are not seeing many protons. You are just observing one. The proton that is at the beginning and the proton that is at the end, alpha and omega. The same proton is being pushed in between all the creation and shattered in time because of photons. So we can see billions of protons, but actually there was only one always at the beginning and the end. So when you go at the speed of light, you cannot see all of them in the middle. You can only see one of them. You can only see the origin, because the speed of light equals no time. Time can be only perceived according to the movement of photons. But if matter moves at the speed of light, then matter comes back to the origin. So if you break at the speed of light one proton, you are breaking the origin of everything. And that is why we are living in a different parallel reality, because we were not supposed to exist in this reality. We are trapped in this reality just because someone went faster than the speed of light and broke the heart of the deer. And with an arrow, a photon, and another particle, it hit the eye, made it blind, and from there, we are living in a reality that is controlled by only one eye instead of by the third eye. So when you erase this eye, this one has to occupy the other space to balance everything. So we are constantly spinning in one direction instead of the infinite. We are not infinite beings, we are just trapped in samsara. We are trapped in only one position. So this story, what it tells is that we are trapped in a reality just because of the wrong movement of an ion, just because there's no right link. And every being in history that tried to repair this was using this symbol. For sure you know it. Of course you know it, because it's very, very tricky. The point of observation of everything. And you can see it in many different cultures, even Christianism, but also Christianism turned it into the devil itself when they said, when the science started to use it too, the Illuminati. So Freemasons and Illuminati don't have the eye as something wrong. They have the eye as the middle that can balance everything. It's the eye of the architect, of the creation of everything. The only one architect that exists, that is possible to exist, which is the divine. So in that way of thinking, this God that is in the center is not a God outside. It's just yourself, your consciousness observing everything in the right position. But if you miss an eye and suddenly you are only observing through one eye in the other position, what happens is that you are controlling the system. Is that you are trying to lead the perception. And of course, that is not something from the Illuminati. That is something from everyone. We all do this. Myself telling you this story, I am using my story to show you a way. But also your dad did the same. Your teacher did the same. Maybe lovers, mom, whoever that tried to tell you a story is leading you through one eye perception. The only way to access the inner eye and balance everything is by closing our eyes and find in meditation the center of the right eye, the one that is being controlled by frequencies and fake light. So as you have the awareness of using the eyes in the right perception, you will see that every symbol that humans have used to explain this, they are not bad. They are not wrong. They're just explaining something. It's like if in the future someone sees the symbol of H2O, which is 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen, and they say it's evil because it's 2 eyes with 1 eye. And therefore, we start to believe that water is the vehicle of the devil because someone is using the hydrogen as a symbol for an entire cosmology. So, is water wrong? Is hydrogen or oxygen wrong? Is the enemy? No, of course not. But our perception of reality turns things into the enemy when we don't know their very nature. So, why I'm saying this? Because it can be very tricky when you start to see symbolisms like this one and you start to see it in the wrong way. When people are showing you certain symbolisms in the wrong position, in the wrong way, suddenly you start to believe, oh, this person is controlling. And look, I am just using the same pattern to show you something. I am using the pattern of the deer where I was born with the pattern of the light where I am standing right now in the present, to show you how a lot of people from this video will start saying that I'm controlling or I work for someone that is controlling. But actually, what is actually happening is that the narrative of fear has been poisoning your mind instead of actually using the power of the symbolisms in the right way by understanding the etymology, the origin, the culture of all the powers that are being shown to us. If we leave all of them from the fear and we allow others to control the symbolisms for ourselves, then what happens is that we are trapped constantly in one eye observation instead of the 2 eyes balancing the center. So the symbol of the 1-eyed deer is basically the story of observation that was broken because when someone broke molybdenum in a Hadron Collider, they made the deer blind. So the deer lost the navigation of the universe. Molybdenum lost the point of observation, the weight of the anchor of this boat that we call Earth, or this boat that is reality. sailing in the ocean of time, it broke the eye. So now the deer is trying to balance it again, but in this boat, in this Noah's Ark, there's no captain anymore, because captain was consciousness that can only access through the eyes, through the third eye. But when there is only one eye, suddenly the boat moves into the wrong position, into the wrong direction. And what happens? Someone else takes the control of everything. So when someone else controls the system, this new guy, new captain, is actually a pirate. And that pirate is called Technetium. In the infinite of this universe, Technetium, from now on, will represent technology without a soul, without a process. Technology is not supposed to be Technetium, it's supposed to be the stone itself, Silica. When Silica is connected correctly with phosphorus, we have the sword and the stone together. A word in tone, a sword in the stone, phosphorus and silica. And that's how you actually connect the frequencies of the entire universe in this beautiful pattern of connectivity around the entire universe. But when you create something that was not supposed to happen in exactly the right position of the ion, suddenly you create Technetium, and you give the power to Technetium when it's a false god. What is a god? God means light, and light is created because of the movement in between protons and electrons. So a fake god is when you force an element to become something that is not. And that is basically the story of who we are. We are constantly trying to be something that we are not. And we project that into our society, into our cultures, traditions, technology, and we start to destroy the system from within. So the story of the one-eyed deer is something that we have to think about during the entire process of these next years. And why? If you're listening to this, you for sure know about the alchemical path that we are taking. We started this year, at the beginning of the year, this alchemical journey where every 13 days we are experiencing one chemical element. We are preparing ourselves in these chemical elements through solstice, equinoxes, and eclipses. Why? Because this is solstice and this is equinox. And as we balance solstice and equinoxes, we can create the right cross to find in solstice and equinoxes the third eye, the ion that is missing. So every time that we celebrate the balancing of the eyes of Earth, we can find the third eye in the core, in the center, to find the north, to find iron, which is the magnetical field. So the third eye in the center. And then sometimes we have eclipses. So those eclipses is when the two eyes focus in only one to perceive another reality in front of us. Only during eclipses we can access codes of the third eye. So in the meantime, we balance them, solstices and equinoxes. And then in eclipses, we combine them to access the third eye. So that is why we gather in eclipses by balancing in holinadas the solstices and equinoxes. But we have one moment that is very, very important, which is the eclipse in Egypt, August 2nd, 2027. That week is the week of Molybdenum. If you follow the calendar of our alchemical journey, the eclipse is during Molybdenum. So we have to access the heart of the deer in Egypt during the longest eclipse of this century to access the data, the information of molybdenum before we start working with technetium right after the eclipse. Right after the eclipse, we will work with the chemical element that was not supposed to exist, that opened the door for many false gods, false light, fake light, that shines in the wrong way. and changed the observation of an ion. So in this path, what we are building in the next year is the story of the deer, the story of this navigation system, the story of this perception reality. And today, a story is going to be told. Today, the story of the gray ones, the story of Technetium, the one that used the power of the rainbow bridge of Rama and Sita and shifted into a fog of confusion and darkness. And this is not because they are wrong or bad, it's just because it was not supposed to be our reality. But we created it as our reality when it was not supposed to be ours. So we are heading towards a new reality guided by the eyes of the grays. And in the movie, you will see a moment where the eye of the deer turns into the eye of the grays that are doing experiments with us. So these grays is not just an alien being, is us, is ourselves in a different reality, is ourselves observing and experimenting with ourselves in a different timeline. So it's not about just aliens, it's about we as aliens, we creating a different reality from where it's supposed to exist. So this is not about enemies or heroes. This is about observation. This is about quantum observation. This is about precession of equinoxes, precession of sight, precession of focus. So we can calibrate the whole story with all the myths. And this is what we are doing. And right in this month, not just the World Cup, not just the Disclosure Day, also what happens this month is that the Gemini, which is the energy of the twins, the sun and the moon, Apollo and Artemis, they are shutting down the system of protons and electrons with the people that are working with them, which is in CERN, Geneva. CERN is shutting down this month, the moment we end with Gemini, with these two eyes. And it shuts for the next 3 to 4 years to get ready to work in a much higher advanced technology when they come back. And they haven't yet reached the speed of light. But if in the next experiment they reach it, they might break something even bigger than we don't even know. So our goal during this process of alchemization is to try to balance this story, is to try to see beyond the symbolisms. Because I am the one-eyed deer. I was born there, and I've been told the story when I was a kid. The one-eyed deer explained me about Sri Lanka, explained me about the observation that was broken. It was because of this that I remember everything that I remember. And it was because of this that we decided to do the alchemical journey. It's not about society. It's not about all of that. It's about procession of mind. It's about locating the mind of the universe in the ion that was missed. So in this long story that shatters everything in pieces, it's very impossible to tell it in one line. It's so difficult to go in a specific line to tell the story from the beginning to the end, when actually the end was the beginning. So when the end, Omega, becomes the beginning, Alpha, the constant of the universe, Kappa, turns into the opposite tree of life. An oak for an oak, the weaver said once. Oak is a tree. But that tree can also be interpreted as omega, alpha, kappa. This in mathematics is end, beginning, constant. So an eye for an eye, a boat for a boat, an oak for an oak. That is what we are trying to repair with the position of the story, with the right precession, with the right position of everything. So this story will take us at least 3 years to put it together. So slowly and slowly, I'm going to try to remember the pieces, because as I said, the story is not a line. It started with the end and will continue through the beginning. And that is why I and many of us work with remembering. This is not about telling a story of the past. This is about remembering the pieces that are shattered. So that is why it's so difficult for me to explain the whole thing. Because at the same time that I am telling the story, there are more links of pieces that have been shattered in different realities. And I don't know and can't know ever all the information, because it's shattered between all of us. So you have a piece, whoever is listening on the outside have a piece, even those that we think are the bad guys have a piece in this story. This is not a story between good and evil. This is not a story of trying to save the universe. This is a story of all of us living different realities because we forgot the main point of observation. That's why consciousness is not about solving a problem, it's about relocating the position of our side. That is why when you watch the movie, remember, Disclosure Day is not about learning about aliens controlling our minds from behind or using the power symbols of the animals to make us feel afraid of what they can do or how they can control us. What we have to do is to remember that all of us have that eye, that all of us are being controlled from within, and we allow it. There is no enemies in this story. There is no aliens trying to control us. It's only us not knowing how to deal with our own power. So there is so much more to say, but I have 3 more years to talk about all of this. I think by now is enough. And I think I summarize a little bit the story of the one-eyed deer and why I am becoming one of them. Why I am a one-eyed deer. Because if we want to correct the perception of what was broken, we have to walk backwards to the right position from where it all started. And that's why I get very close to things that needs to be corrected. That is why I will get close to certain people, to certain things, to certain places that are encoded as the places where it was redirected. So I don't care if you think I am the bad guy or the enemy. I will do my mission no matter how and no matter from which dimension, because I am that I am, and I am an eternal being. So as you all, I am part of this system in many different levels. So here I am to be in service to tell the story from the very beginning. So I invite you to dive in the story. I invite you to remember the story of the one-eyed deer. An eye for an eye, a boat for a boat, an oak for an oak.